The Hugh Hewitt Show begins in 5 seconds.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt, good morning, every America. Get going. If you're not already at work, you should be going there. That's what I believe. Get going early in the morning. Split decision last night in American elections, if you're just waking up and wondering. It is not too close to call in Kentucky. The Democrat, Beshear, won. But Matt Bevin isn't giving up, and it's going to go for a recount, and it's a very complicated process. He's down by about 5,000 votes. He's going to go full Al Gore, though. And Kentucky law, as recounted in an article in the Louisville Courier Review, suggests there's a way for him to get the legislature to put him back in office. But, I'm not really a fan of this kind of stuff. This is what the Democrats did to Dino Rossi in Washington State in 2004. Keep counting till you win. It's what the referees did to the American basketball team in the Olympics of 1972. Just keep playing the game until the Russians win. Generally, if you don't want to be, if it's not close, they can't cheat. So unless they find some mathematical error, Bevin lost. But the big message, the big takeaway, red got redder, blue got bluer last night. Virginia is now a blue state. I've been telling people that. I think I told people that on the Salem Radio Network editorial board meeting on Monday. I live in a blue state. I moved from a deep blue state to a light blue state. It's barely blue, but it's blue. And that means taxes will go up and gun controls will increase and radical abortion laws will pass. And then they'll figure out what they want to really do after Donald Trump's reelection. But I look at those Kentucky numbers. I look at those Kentucky numbers, and especially the Kentucky numbers down the numbers, where you go down ballot. The governor's race, in fact, saw a 10-point swing against their 4 years ago. Bevin lost 10 points over last year. 4 years ago, Matt Bevin won by 9 points. He lost by 1 point last night. Secretary of State went from a Democrat winning by 2 points 4 years ago to a Republican winning by 4. The Attorney General barely won. The Democrat Attorney General barely won 4 years ago. The Republican Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, just a rising superstar, won by 15 points. The auditor's race went on an 18-point swing to the Republicans. And the Republicans won the Treasurer and the Commissioner of Agriculture by 19 and 21 points, respectively. It is a deep red state with a flawed candidate. I like Matt Bevin. I've known him for, probably 10 years. Something like that. He's a nice guy, but he had a very, very controversial and scandal-plagued first term, and Trump couldn't get him over the line. Very close. He was down by 20 points in polling. It's a dead heat. He's going to lose by 5,000 points, but 5,000 votes, unless something strange happens and we do the Democrat thing and keep counting until we win. But in Virginia, the Virginia flipped the state house to all blue for the first time, 20 years, 25 years. And so they'll do some Virginia Democratic things. They're not radical Democrats. It's not like the California nuttery. But nevertheless, I got to start looking around for a place to move again because they'll come here. Now, they might not raise taxes while it matters to me. I figured that I've got 15 years left on the radio. And so then I retire and I can go wherever I want. But I got to stay somewhere on the East Coast. And the Beltway is what I like to do. It's Beltway magic, right? I tell you what's going on in this crazy city. But the fact is, Charleston looks pretty nice to me. Columbia, South Carolina looks pretty nice to me. There are some nice places around. Florida, Florida's humidity, just honest to good. Ron DeSantis, you're a great governor. Can you get an air-conditioned city? Can you just put a dome over a city and air condition it? Because that would be a big win. Because in the summertime, it's not really California. But I can't go back to California. It's such a broken place, and the Blues are taking it over. But last night, look, bottom line, it's a 3-state election in 2020, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. I've been saying that. There is no data on the board from last night that says other than that, there's no reason to believe any other state will flip. Candidates make a difference. Matt Bevin was not as good a candidate as you needed to ride a Republican wave in Kentucky. The Mississippi governor is a Republican, withstood that. Louisiana, we don't know that. That's not until, I think, tonight. But we'll see if a Republican wins down there. Split decision, because the country is split. So don't spend a lot of time overthinking this one. If you're a Republican running statewide, you put your arms around Trump. This is just a purely cold, calculating, Machiavellian assessment. Pure Machiavellian Republican political consultant. Danny Diaz, if you're listening, give me a call. Any of you people over at Firehouse Strategies, give me a call. I'm pretty confident. If you're a Republican looking at this result last night and you say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Candidate, hey, young man or young woman, you're running statewide, you go find Donald Trump and put your arms around him and squeeze. That is true in all but a few blue states. I don't know what Susan Collins is going to do. Martha McSally has got to put her arms around Donald Trump and squeeze in Arizona. Cory Gardner, that's a blue state, but it's a light blue state. I think he's got to put his arms around Donald Trump and squeeze and win on turnout. Hope the Democrats nominate Elizabeth Warren. You have to make a choice right now. Do I put my arms around Donald Trump and squeeze, or do I run away? If you run away, you're dead. Republicans will not forgive you. They won't. The base is thoroughly in favor of Donald Trump. They have bought into the largely true narrative that this town is completely run by elitist establishmentarians who are in it for themselves. And they don't care about impeachment, not a lick. By the way, I don't even know how to tell you what the Democrats think they're doing right now. The headlines, New York Times, the Washington Post, will be incomprehensible. With revived statement, Sondland adds to testimony linking aid to Ukraine investigations that Trump sought. The New York Times headline, Sondland updates impeachment testimony describing Ukraine quid pro quo. Does anyone out there at all think that this resonates or makes any sense to the average person in their car? Does anyone know who Sondland is? Do they know what the quid pro quo is? Do they have any clue about what the Democrats are doing in secret? Do you really think you can make this into an impeachable offense? It's not. It is not significant. I said that on day one when I read the transcript. Read the transcript. It is not significant. There is weirdness around the 2016 election. There is Hunter Biden on the Burisma board. There is Joe Biden saying he got a Ukrainian prosecutor fired. There is a lot of weird stuff in Ukraine. And Donald Trump leaned on everyone to try and figure out what the heck happened there. Did it have anything to do with him? It's completely consistent with Donald Trump. It is not going to get him thrown out of office by the Senate. I'm working on a piece for the Post. They got three roads, Leader McConnell. By the way, Leader McConnell's going to win by 25 points in Kentucky. He is. Mitch McConnell is Cocaine Mitch dominated there last night, as did Donald Trump, except for Matt Bevin, who may still, I just don't like going to the legislature. I think maybe Mitch McConnell would actually prefer him to concede gracefully and move away, because you got this superstar attorney general. And that superstar attorney general, by the way, Daniel Cameron, he's going to replace Mitch McConnell in the Senate eventually, just so everybody knows. Mitch is not indestructible. He can go another 10 years, but he's not indestructible. And eventually he's going to retire and watch Louisville lose football games. And when he does, the new Attorney General, Daniel Cameron. By the way, first statewide African-American ever elected as a Republican in the state of Kentucky. He is the first one elected, African-American elected statewide in Kentucky in, I think, 70 years. It's some crazy number. Mitch McConnell did that. So Cocaine Mitch firmly in control of the bluegrass state. And the money machine is rolling. The Virginia election, exactly what I suspected. Look, I went and voted with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt yesterday and stumbled around looking for a polling place, because it's only the third or fourth time we've had an election here since we got here. And finally was helped out by a nice young Democratic man walking along, explaining to us why we have no Republicans on the ballot. I wrote in Ed Gillespie, a wonderful Virginia Republican, former head of the RNC for both the Virginias. We didn't run anyone. The Republicans didn't run anybody. No wonder they don't win the state house. But, you know, Virginia is just deep blue in the north, deep red in the south, and in between it's mixed. And unless you run a great candidate with a great race, you're not going to win here. It's like Arizona is deep red, but they run great candidates in great races, and they win occasionally. But Doug Ducey won by, 20 points. So don't overthink this. Red got redder, blue got bluer. I'm on Meet the Press on Sunday. If they're at what happened here, you know, all the national news media, Twitter, which is a little box full of lefties, talks to each other about what a great night it was. It wasn't a great night for Democrats. It was a split decision. They didn't throw an upset. It was not last year. It wasn't the midterms. It was not a referendum on Donald Trump. Settle in for the main event, which begins today. The main event begins today. The 2020 election begins. The 2019 elections are over. I guess they're over tomorrow night when everything is counted and settled in Louisiana and Virginia and Kentucky. But the main event is that Donald Trump is ascendant among Red America. He is hated by Blue America. And I think Red America has a lock on the Electoral College. That's what I think is going on. But we'll tell you more about that when we come back. Plus, what's going on in Great Britain. We got some they're in the middle of a campaign that will determine that country's future for a generation. You are listening to the Wednesday morning edition. I was at Gettysburg College last night in Gettysburg. I'll tell you about that when I come back. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code Hugh.
Hugh Hewitt Show. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Was out a little bit late last night with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt. We were driven up to Gettysburg College. If you're watching on the Univision, you'll see my new Gettysburg College mug. Notice that beautiful mug? Gettysburg College is sort of the Oberlin of Pennsylvania. Wonderful liberal arts college, about 2,500 students. And they have a program there, the Fielding Fellows, named for one of my mentors, Fred Fielding, longtime White House fixture, deputy counsel to President Nixon, White House counsel to Ronald Reagan, White House counsel to George W. Bush, member of the 9/11 Commission, veritable wise man, and funny as can be. And Fred is a Gettysburg grad. And a few years back, they established this Fielding Fellows program under Professor Harshaw there. And she invited us up last night, so we went up. And we had dinner with 8 of the 9 fellows. And of the 9 fellows, 1 is off interviewing for a very prestigious scholarship. So there were 8 for dinner, and Shirley and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I, so FMH and I, had so much fun. Look, our kids are all adults and out of the house. They're young adults and out of the house. These are college kids. And so they have the fresh-faced enthusiasm of youth. They are intelligent, driven, smart, ambitious, they're all seniors as well. And they all have, 7 out of 9 are Democrat. And I successfully called 7 out of 8's primary choices based upon little bits of random knowledge, because we are sorting ourselves by identity politics. And if you give the correct poker tells, I can tell who you're for. And came away convinced Pete Buttigieg is going to be the hero of the college campus world. I have the sorting hat. I do. I have the sorting hat. I am the sorting hat. And in fact, I'm a sorting hat on every media set. I just see that Zerlina Maxwell is a very fine left-wing political commentator on MSNBC, very professional left-winger, laughing at my assessment. And that's fine. Go ahead and laugh. She wrote, "Laughing was not professional" on Twitter. This is not correct, she says about me. Trump is the reason they lost. That's simply not true. You can only whip a racist base into a frenzy so many times. There are just more of us non-racists than maybe folks will start to recognize. So I'm about to respond. You may want to look at those down-ticket races, Erlina Maxwell, especially in Kentucky, where that racist base powered Daniel Cameron AG to a huge win for the first statewide win for an African-American in decades. That racist base stuff, that really works outside of the hard left. The hard left is destroying the Democratic ability to see. You put on your hard left glasses and you can't see. Never let that happen to you. Never let the hard left bases happen to you. Now, I got Admiral Stavridis coming up after the break, because I got to talk to him about some foreign affairs stuff, but I got to play for you a bit of Boris Johnson yesterday on Sky News with Sophie Ridge, cut number 14.
On the 31st of October?
It's a matter of, it's a matter of deep regret. But what we need to do now is get on and do it. And the difference between this government and any other party is that only this government offers a deal that is ready to go and a way of delivering it immediately in the middle of December, if we're lucky enough to get a majority. Now, of course, it's a big if, and we'll be working very hard. But the reason why it's necessary to have an election is because I'm afraid otherwise what was going to happen, Parliament was going to rope-a-dope us. They were going to say, okay, we'll agree this, we'll agree that, but they weren't actually going to give final approval, not by New Year, not by January the 31st, and then we would have had to go for another extension. And the reason why it's so painful to have these extensions, it's not because of my promises or my
Returns from break in 5 seconds.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thanks so much for listening to Hugh Hewitt Show. Joined now by Robert Costa of the Washington Post. You follow him on Twitter at Costa Reports. You can see him on Friday night hosting Washington Week in Review. I'm on Meet the Press this Sunday. Maybe Costa is as well. Are you joining me on Sunday on the panel, Robert?
I'm always available, but I'm not around this Sunday. Rats.
Well, tell me what your take is. I'll give you the preface. I think the red got redder and the blue got bluer with a couple of outliers last night. Matt Bevin, running 15 points behind the ticket. Daniel Cameron, the first black attorney general in Kentucky history, winning by 15 points, tells me that the Trump voters are steady Eddie, but you can't stand as Bevin did against the teachers union down there. But I can't extrapolate a Trump backlash here. I can only extrapolate red got redder, blue got bluer. What does Robert Costa say?
Well, how do you explain then the president rallied on Monday for Bevin, and this has nothing to do with Trump at all in your mind?
I think Trump got him 10 or 15 points by going down there, but just 5,000 votes short. And I count votes.
Based on my conversations with political operatives in the state, I think it's right that the president did definitely stoke enthusiasm in the state, but it is still a red state, and the president's favorite candidate went down. We've seen this before in races where the candidates, their poor performance was a key factor, if not the factor, like in the Roy Moore race, the Alabama Senate race a few years ago. And Matt Bevin's handling of Medicaid, his battles with the teachers' union, his divisive style, all made him a candidate who was widely seen within his own party as ill-prepared and not well-positioned for this 2019 gubernatorial race. That said, there is concern that the president's political capital is not enough to save someone in a red state.
Well, I think that's true, but that's not inconsistent with what I'm saying, which is that the states that went for Trump in 2020 are very likely to go for Trump again. And I base that on, in Kentucky, the Secretary of State's race down there went from a Democrat who won by 2 points 4 years ago to a Republican winning by 4. The Attorney General won that race for the Democrats 4 years ago. 15-point black Republican Attorney General was elected today. Auditor went from Republican plus 4 years ago to Republican plus 14 this year. Treasurer stayed the same, Republican plus 21. In other words, I think the red base is there if the candidate they want appears, and Donald Trump is the candidate that red base wants. So I don't believe in hand-wringing. I don't think it's an easy race. I don't think it's a hard race. I think it's a race.
Based on my reporting, I would agree with your analysis that the red is red as it's ever been, and it's there for the president. It's mostly there for the Republican Party. But beyond that base, there has to be concerns. And I was talking to people on the record last night about this, like Scott Reed at the Chamber of Commerce, Michael Steele, others, who look at the suburbs and they wonder, is the president's message on the economy, on regulation, able to break through amid all this impeachment process, the different dramatic things happening in Washington? And you have in Philadelphia suburbs and the Virginia suburbs, and now in even Kentucky, some of these suburbs of Louisville, not a strong showing for the Republicans.
Absolutely. By the way, objective evidence. Rob Lowry is a friend of mine, Bucks County commissioner, incumbent, lost by 700 votes. He's a great candidate. He's a terrific commissioner. He lost by 700 votes. I do believe that is a problem. At the same time, I think that the Elizabeth Warren matchup will, in fact, define the race. Let me play for you my conversation with Marc Lotter from 30 minutes ago on the 2020 race, Robert Costa. Mark, take your hat off. Not speaking officially for Donald Trump now. You really want Elizabeth Warren to be their nominee, don't you?
I mean, there are some advantages to each.
No, come on, Mark. You really want Elizabeth Warren, don't you?
It looks like that's where it's headed right now, but we don't know if it's going to stay
Mark,
there.
come on. You really want Elizabeth Warren. This is just Marc Lotter, not the president. You really want her, don't you?
Yeah, I will tell you that. It doesn't
Okay,
really
Robert Costa. I got a out of him. What do you think?
Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who's up in 2020, told me yesterday, walking around the Capitol, that Senator Warren as the nominee would help him in Texas, would be beneficial to the Republican Party. So you see a lot of Republicans wanting to run against someone who embraces Medicare for all. They think that's almost a better race than running against someone like Mayor Buttigieg or an Amy Klobuchar or Vice President Biden, who does not have that position. Democrats, though, think there's a lot of energy, just like there's a lot of energy among President Trump's core voters for his hardline style. Senator Warren has her own energy and enthusiasm on the left because she takes her positions.
Now, Robert, I agree with that, but here's the reason why I'm going to vote for Elizabeth Warren in the Virginia primary next year. I was going to vote for Bernie. Now I'm going to vote for Elizabeth Warren because she's going to take away the health care plans of union members and union retirees. Those are the people who beat Matt Bevin last night, by the way. Teachers concerned about their retirement plans, promises, pensions. And I'm from a union town in a union state, and Elizabeth Warren is 6 points behind Donald Trump in Michigan among registered voters, according to New York Times Siena poll, because she is threatening union members individually with Medicare for all. And she can't erase that. That's like flypaper stuck on her, isn't it?
If it becomes a referendum on Medicare for all and its cost, many Democrats I've spoken with feel that could be a huge political burden for them. At the same time, they feel like she's an economic populist, and if it becomes economic populism from the left versus economic populism on the right, and President Trump, they feel that's a competitive race.
But they can't really believe that. You saw those numbers from New York Times Siena. What did that tell you about Michigan and Elizabeth Warren?
The Midwest is going to be the battleground. And the question, if you're Senator Warren, if you're the nominee, is can offering an expanded state and expanded benefits give people who have grievances about the global economy enough to hold on to turn away from President Trump and just say it's not about his tweets. It's not a suburban style issue. It's about whether they're being provided for by this administration in terms of the economy.
All right, so if you are a Republican consultant this morning and you have a statewide race in front of you, Senate, governor, attorney general, do you put your arms around Donald Trump or do you run away from him?
Depends on your standing as a candidate. I mean, look, Governor Bevin did that. He had his own problems. He thought running against the Democrats as left wing and out of control and impeachment would be the way to go. But if you're, I just got off the phone with Ryan Costello, former Republican moderate from Philadelphia suburbs. If you're in the Philly suburbs and you're a statewide candidate trying to win the suburban voters, I don't know if you're a Pat Toomey. He's not up in 2020. But if you're a Pat Toomey type, do you really run with President Trump? Very unlikely.
Yeah, but Toomey will be running with a new president because he won in the off year. He's a very strong candidate. I'm talking about someone like Cory Gardner in Colorado, Martha McSally in Arizona, to a much lesser extent, Tom Tillis in North Carolina. He's already thrown his arms around Trump. And in Georgia, David Perdue has got Trump by the arms as well. I just think the reality is red is redder. And even in blue states, with the possible exception of Susan Collins in Maine, which is funky, it's the replay of the 2016 map. It's a replay of the game.
But Hugh, when I was at the Capitol yesterday talking to some Republicans, there is concern that when you say embrace President Trump politically, they don't know what that means anymore because impeachment is such a topsy-turvy experience. Every day, new transcripts, depositions. It's a tough bet. Even if you like President Trump and think his political capital is enough, the impeachment process has muddied the water in terms of how this all looks, how it'll play out for you.
You raise an interesting point. I have a column coming out in the Post, which I'm working on right now. Mitch McConnell has three paths. Peremptorily reject any impeachment article on the basis of due process flaws, ex parte contacts with the whistleblower, et cetera. Go full in. Allow Donald Trump to call every witness on the Steele dossier and every corner of Russiagate and examine. And then the middle path, which is the 1999 path, the House managers present blah, 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 the telephone impeachment. The Senate listens in silence and refuses to convict and remove. Right now, it seems like Mitch McConnell's on the third path. The middle path, it's the disaster path, the perfectly executed half maneuver. I think he's going to end up going one or three. What do you hear? What's your reporting, Robert?
He's going to do what saves the majority. This is the most calculating, strategic mind in the Republican Party. He wants to give his members an opportunity to win, whether that's in hugging the president or distancing themselves from the president. He's going to allow it.
That is so perfectly put. He is going to do whatever saves the majority. And he's got great pollsters, right? He has a great political team.
He does not care about President Trump or anyone politically or personally. I've never heard anyone say he's worrying about someone's political standing. He cares about the courts, his friends tell me. He cares about the future of American law. And that's his entire focus.
You know, Henry Clay tells us a lot about Mitch McConnell. He cares about the union. He cares about the Constitution. He cares about judges. And what you said, he cares about that majority because it gives him leverage unlike any Kentuckian has had since Clay. And I think that turns eventually, very quickly, into we're not going to listen to these articles of impeachment. The process is flawed. Have you heard that from anyone else? John Cornyn admitted to me on this show on Monday, yeah, that has a lot of appeal.
McConnell's going to negotiate with Schumer about the rules, and there's a belief that he's handled this before in '98. He's been through it, and it doesn't need. There's a big belief, Hugh, that if this thing stretches into the 2020 year, a trial, that the Republicans will have a talking point that it's during an election year, let the election be the issue, and they'll try to just quickly move on from the trial, do it, but not have it be a long, dramatic process.
I think that's wrong, but I do trust McConnell to make the decision that will, as you say, keep the majority. We'll be watching on Friday night Washington Week in Review with Robert Costa as the host. Read what he has to say this morning in the Washington Post. Follow him on Twitter at Costa Reports, and then come right back here. I am perplexed a little bit by Democrats not understanding how toxic the Elizabeth Warren health care issue is. Now, Job Creators Network is a sponsor of this program, and they are doing everything they can to get people smart about Obamacare, which is bad enough. And if you've got a nightmare story with Obamacare, Job Creators Network would love for you to tell them that at healthcareforyou.com. Healthcareforyou.com, because they know that this is an issue that drives voters. We got to drive down the cost of prescription drugs. We have to make insurance accessible and portable. But Obamacare hasn't done that, and Elizabeth Warren is a nightmare approaching for your health care plan. So go to healthcareforyou.com and share your story about what has happened under Democrat legislation about health care. They set up the system, whatever your story is. If you like it, then you got to thank them. Got to thank President Obama and Obamacare. But if you don't like it, you lost your doctor, you lost your plan, you're paying more, you're getting less. Go to healthcareforyou.com and tell your story. Also, when you're online, don't forget, time to plug relieffactor.com. If you're getting into your car, don't forget, go back and get it. I did 2 hours to Gettysburg College last night, 2 hours back from the Beltway to go up and talk with the fielding fellows at Gettysburg College. Had a great time, wonderful kids, but it's 4 hours in a car, and I'm glad I took my Relief Factor, and I take it every morning, took it in the first hour of the day, and I remind everyone going out to their commute. You want to support the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that accompany that particular problem. And both the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I got out of that car last night and said, that's a lot of sitting for one night. We had a lot of sitting, and it just doesn't do you. You got to keep moving. You got to get your back up and loose, and it's just a lot of sitting. But relieffactor.com works. Join the tens of thousands of people who try it. $19.95 gets you started. Come on back here, 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. I want to talk to you a little bit more. Jim Jordan, by the way, cut number one, talking about Adam Schiff.
I mean, that's a Kevin, Leader McCarthy's call. If Kevin and Ranking Member Nunes want that to happen, then that helps our team. I just want to help our team. I want to help the country see the truth here, that President Trump didn't do anything wrong, and what the Democrats are doing is partisan, it's unfair, and frankly, it's ridiculous, particularly the way they've went about with these secret meetings in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol.
He's 100% right. Americans know due process. It's in our bones. We do not like Adam Schiff's sham show trial, and it is going to crush Democrats if it goes on. It's going to do that. We saw the results in Kentucky last night. The red states got redder, and Donald Trump has a red state majority. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network Foundation.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Well, this is a great surprise, America. Donald Trump Jr. joins me. He's got a brand new book out, Triggered, which I've begun reading. I expect to talk to him on Friday more about it. Donald Trump Jr., welcome. I don't think you've ever been my guest on the show. I think Kurt Schlichter's talked to you a couple of times. Welcome.
That's right. I've definitely been on with Kurt, but how's it going, man?
It's good. Congratulations on Triggered. I was laughing on my way to Gettysburg College last night because the first two chapters, as funny as can be, you're not holding back, are you?
Not really my style, man. If you've watched it, whether it's social or whatever, it's just like a 300-page version of my Twitter account, right? We have to go a little bit hot because that's the nature of the world in which we live, and that's the battle we're fighting against some of this craziness these days. It's so much bias, there's so much craziness that you got to fight back, and you got to fight back hard, or they'll steamroll you.
Don Trump Jr., I thought the funniest moment of your father's presidency occurred when the Washington Nationals were at the White House this week. and it triggered, using the title of your book, it triggered media when Kurt Suzuki put on a MAGA cop and your dad put his arms around him. I just laughed and laughed and laughed, but Twitter exploded. They were, in fact, triggered.
They are. I mean, it's so easy to drive them crazy. I mean, this isn't even a rational process anymore, that someone could be a fan. I mean, I saw it this weekend going to the UFC fights where we walk in Madison Square Garden, like heart of New York City, right? Not exactly Trump country. And it went wild. And then all of a sudden, blue check mark Twitter starts running around. Oh my God, he was booed. I'm like, Dana White's like, are you kidding me? This is like the most electrifying entrance I've ever had. But that's the nature of the world these days. The leftists and the control the media, the control social media, try to do this, and they will push all of this nonsense. It's why we're out there fighting so hard, so that regular, hardworking Americans who are getting the benefits of the Trump economy, of Trump policies, of deregulation, of everything, that they actually get it. Because, man, the news that they're seeing and consuming is so biased, and there's so much hatred. Someone's got to call it out, and I guess it was going to be me.
In Triggered, in the first couple of pages, you write, quote, think of it as a trip through Jurassic Park, only instead of dangerous dinosaurs, you get to see sleepy liberal losers, socialist crybabies, and hypocritical politicians in the media. If you decide to come along in reading Triggered, I promise that nothing will jump into the car with us. I think you're wrong, that all the left-wing crazies on Twitter will jump on anyone who says anything nice about Don Trump Jr.'s book, Triggered. I mean, they will.
Oh, it's funny, man. I love reading the commentary. Like if someone says, "Hey, it's actually pretty funny," no, it's not. It's terrible, human. I'm like, it's pretty amazing. I've seen it all, and it was time to write the book. People said for years, "Hey, you should write a book on business." I go, honestly, I think my dad has that covered. I mean, what am I going to do that he hasn't done as it relates to business? But when you got to be, the tip of the spear of the greatest political upset in history, and I was there for all of it, and go around the country, then I got to be the number 2 target of the Mueller witch hunt hoax, that taxpayer-funded atrocity to try to overthrow the duly elected president of the United States. I was the number 2 target of that thing. I did 30 hours of testimony. I said, you know what? There's a lot of material in here. I've had a front row seat to both the most amazing side of it and also the most vicious and evil side of it. And what we're seeing today is just a continuation of that, Hugh. What we're seeing today is the continuation of the impeachment inquiry that started on November 9th, 2016, the day my father did the unthinkable, which is to take on the establishment and win.
Okay, so Don Jr., there are 3 choices before Leader McConnell. Peremptorily dismiss an impeachment. It's going to happen. The Democrats are nuts. They're going to do it. Or do what we did in 99, which is have a show trial for a couple of weeks and then dismiss them. Or do something different. Dive deep into the Steele dossier. Dive deep into the Mueller special counsel staffing, what they didn't investigate. Dive deep into all of the Russiagate stuff. Which of those 3 doors do you want the leader to take?
Listen, honestly, I think I'd like a deep dive. My father, while, according to the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness, they're really happy about this impeachment inquiry going on in the basement where Adam Schiff is judge, jury, and executioner. Republicans aren't allowed to ask questions. They're not allowed to subpoena witnesses. Like, let's do it. Let's get into the details, because I know what happened when it happened. The second there was question, my father, here's the transcript. How come we don't have that same openness? How come we don't have that
same transparency
from the left?
You need a completely competent defense counsel, one of the best, someone who's been a former federal judge, a former federal prosecutor, to put on that case, Don Jr. If you go to a full trial in the Senate, do you have anyone in mind to lead that? I mean, a really hardcore prosecutor.
I know the legal team obviously does. That's less my forte. That's not what I do, and I'm not involved in that side because I'm outside of the administration and everything like that. I just run around, the country campaigning for those guys who are willing to fight. The Republicans who have learned from Trump that you don't just have to take the loss because the other side wants you to. And that's another big part of the book. And talking about that process, Trump has changed the landscape for Republicans who for 50 years have just turned the other cheek and allowed the left to totally steamroll them. He's created a new age of conservative politics where guys are saying, hey, I can push back.
All right, 30 seconds left.
Like liberal kryptonite.
30 seconds left. Marc Lotter was on last hour. I got him to admit he really wants to run against Elizabeth Warren. Do you?
I mean, running against Elizabeth Warren would be kind of great. I mean, her entire life is based on a lie. I mean, this is someone who, got tenure and jobs and stuff because she's a Native American, got trolled into taking a DNA test that showed her as being 1,024th, maybe Native American. And she took that, and think of the judgment. You want this person with a nuclear football.
So that's a yes? So that's a yes?
I think it'd be great.
That's a yes. You want Elizabeth Warren, Don Jr. You're going to trigger everyone again.
I take Warren, Biden, Bernie, you name it, I'm happy to run against them.
I know, but you really want Elizabeth. Don Trump Jr. talks again on Friday. The new book is Triggered. Thanks, America, for listening. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.